All right, we're going to take a trip back in time to August of 1956. We're going to look at how one single, totally unexpected week in a young boy's life can really set the stage for everything that comes after. It's an incredible story about courage, about trust, and about having your world blown wide open.
You know, it's a question we all probably ask ourselves at some point, right? What were those key moments that made us who we are? Well, for a 12-year-old kid named Randy Seaver, the answer showed up in a 4-seat airplane, with an invitation that would literally change the way he saw the world forever.
Okay, so here's a really cool twist in this story. The narrator, it's the family home itself. And from the house's point of view, we get this amazing peek into the family's emotions. It all starts right here, with a mother's gut reaction, that wave of anxiety the second an adventure is put on the table for her son.
So picture this, it's August 1956. There's a knock on the door. It's the neighbors, the Cravers, and they have an offer for young Randy that's just completely out of the blue, something that would take him way, way farther from home than he'd ever imagined.
So here was the deal, a chance to fly all the way up the coast in a little Cessna with his neighbors. For Randy, this was absolute magic. I mean, the Cravers were both seasoned pilots, and the idea of soaring through the clouds, seeing new cities, and even crossing into another country, that was the stuff of dreams for a 12-year-old.
But, of course, the big question was, what would his parents say? And this slide just nails that timeless, universal conflict every parent goes through. That push and pull between wanting to protect your kid and wanting them to grow. For his mom, Betty, the idea was just plain terrifying. Her son, so young, so far away, in a tiny plane. But for his dad, Fred, he saw a golden opportunity for his book-smart son to get out there and actually experience the world.
Well, in the end, trust and a little bit of homework won the day. Betty, being the protective mom she was, she did her due diligence. She talked to the Cravers, made sure they knew what they were doing, and confirmed that they were all about safety. And once she was reassured, she and Fred made a really brave decision. They said yes, they were going to let their son go on this adventure.
And just like that, the day came. The trip was officially on. This was the start of a huge journey, not just for Randy up in the air, but for his parents too, who were left behind on the ground.
After the car pulled away with Randy inside, his mom Betty turned to his dad and just said this: "He's only 12. Wow. I mean, it's such a simple line, but it's so powerful. It just perfectly captures all the love and the worry and the sheer courage it takes to let your kid go out into the world and find their own way.
So, while Randy's up there in the clouds, imagine his mom, Betty, back home, tracing his journey on a map in her mind. Okay, first stop, Sacramento, then up to Medford, Oregon, then over to Bellingham, and finally, across the border into Canada. This wasn't just Randy's adventure. It was a whole week of hope and nail-biting for his family.
But for Randy, oh man, can you even imagine? At 10,000 feet in this unpressurized cabin, the world was just unfolding beneath him like a giant living map. He wasn't just reading about geography in a textbook anymore, he was seeing it. Watching these massive, incredible volcanoes like Mount Shasta, Mount Rainier, and Mount Baker pass right under the wings of the plane. That's an education you just can't get in a classroom.
But this trip wasn't just about the pretty views. It was a series of real challenges and brand new experiences that were going to test him and shape him, starting with a pretty intense run-in with Mother Nature.
The first real test came in Medford, Oregon. This massive thunderstorm just rolled in, and it was so violent it was actually threatening to rip the little Cessna right off the airfield. But what Randy saw in the Cravers' calm, professional response was a huge lesson. Adventure isn't about avoiding danger. It's about managing it with skill and a cool head.
And this quote is just perfect, because this is what happens, right? When you're 12 and you go through something like that, you don't just get through it. You earn a story of real danger and survival that you get to tell for the rest of your life. It proves you've been tested.
Then came another huge first for him, crossing an international border. For Randy, Canada had always just been a different color on a map, but now it was a real place. Hearing the slightly different accents, seeing different money, all the little cultural changes, it made the idea of a foreign country totally real and exciting. The world had just gotten a whole lot bigger.
And in Vancouver, he came face to face with a more personal challenge, the famous Capilano Suspension Bridge. I mean, just imagine being 12, walking across that thing as it sways and bounces high above a river. It was that perfect mix of pure terror and absolute exhilaration, a moment where he could literally feel his own bravery kicking in.
And then, in one of those moments that you just can't script, Randy's personal adventure slammed right into a major historical event. On their way back home, they landed in San Francisco at the exact same time President Eisenhower was in town for the Republican National Convention. Randy actually saw the presidential motorcade drive by and caught a glimpse of the president himself. Suddenly, history wasn't just something on the news, it was happening right there in front of him.
So after this whirlwind week, it was finally time to head home. But Randy didn't just come back with souvenirs. He came back loaded with stories. He returned a storyteller, ready to share every single thing he had seen and felt. You can just picture the dinner table that night, right? The stories just came tumbling out of him. He was talking about the incredible view from the plane, the scary storm, that crazy swaying bridge in Vancouver, seeing the president, and even a weird stop at the Oregon Vortex. He was taking his experiences and weaving them into this amazing narrative for his family, basically reliving the whole adventure all over again.
And his family, they could just see it. He was their boy for sure, but something had shifted. When he looked at maps now, it was with his totally new understanding. He could connect the lines and colors to the actual mountains and rivers he'd flown over. He had stepped out into a much bigger world, and you just can't go back from that.
So what's the big takeaway here? What did this 1 week really do for him in the long run? Well, this single trip planted seeds that would just keep growing for the rest of his life. It's a perfect example of how one formative experience can echo for decades.
I mean, look at the gifts this trip gave him. It sparked a lifelong passion for flying and geography. It gave him the confidence to go out and explore places he didn't know. It taught him about trust in the generosity of his neighbors and in the faith of his parents. But maybe most importantly, it showed him that the big, wide world wasn't just in books. It was real, it was accessible, and it was out there waiting for him.
And this brings us right back to our amazing narrator, the house itself. This final thought just says it all, doesn't it? Home isn't just a building. It's the safe harbor that makes it possible to even think about taking risks. It's the place that holds all the worry for you while you're gone and celebrates you when you come back, changed for the better.
Randy's big adventures started in a tiny plane, but it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? We all have those moments, those experiences, big or small, that pushed our boundaries and showed us a bigger world. So the question I'll leave you with is this: what was your flight? What was that one adventure that permanently expanded your horizons?